How to make puddles in Blender. Puddles are awesome and I love to use them in my scenes because you just get free detail pretty easily. Now you can follow me step by step so you can do it yourself. And if you have any questions along the way, just ask them in the comments. I'm gonna answer all of them. Let's go. Our scene starts with a camera and my little Miho. But we need a plane. With Shift A, we can create a mesh and a plane. This is our plane. Now we're gonna increase it by a lot. When you scale something up, hold Ctrl A and apply the scale. Now there's a few things we have to do which are kind of boring but important to do, so just follow along. If you render in cycles, switch it to Eevee for a moment. Once you are in Eevee, click on Material Properties and add a new one. On the left hand side here, you can see my shader editor. If you don't have that here, you can always make new windows if you right click in between, and then you can, for example, a horizontal split and then add more windows. But in that case, we don't want this, so I join them back. Once you have a new window here, click on this little icon and go to shader editor. That's what it is. This is my material right now. As you can see, when I change the color changed. You can only see that in the shading viewport or in Eevee. But even in Eevee you won't see anything as long as you don't have any lights. So let's stay here. Under material properties, when you click on settings, you need to switch the blend mode from opaque to alpha hashed, and also the shadow mode. Once this is done, go back to your render properties and go back to cycles if you want to render in cycles. The first plane we just made is going to be the puddles, so let's call it puddles. Also the material we're going to call puddles. But in order to have puddles, we need an actual ground. We're going to create that now with Shift A. We're going to make another plane, scale it up, basically the same size like the other one. Click G to move it, Z to move it only on the Z space, hold Shift, just move it 1 millimeter down so we can see our puddle plane is still on top. Let's call this one ground. And for the ground, we're just gonna give it a random material. I use one from Polyhaven, brushed concrete. On the top viewport, I'm gonna switch to cycles. So this is what it's gonna look like in the end. I don't have any lights in here, so just to make it simple for myself, I'm gonna add a HDRI. Beautiful, now we can see that. Now let's make our puddles. We're gonna delete the principal BSDF with X. Now we have no material set up. We hold Shift A and we start with glass. I try to explain every node step by step so you really understand what we're doing here, because I feel like there's no purpose if I just show you how to do it and then you just do it and copy paste it and you don't learn anything. So really I try to move it step by step, and I hope it's not too boring, but I think it's very important. When we have our glass material right here and I link it with the surface, this is basically what it looks like. It's a mirror, and that is going to be the most reflective part of our puddle. But in order to use that properly as the puddle, we also need transparency. So the second node we're going to use is transparent. Now we have to mix those two nodes, and we're going to do that by holding Control, Shift, right click on one of them and combine it. Now let's bring transparency to the top, switch those two around. In a lot of node setups, transparent also always has to be on top, and that's basically how I try to remember it, because it's the transparent, it's the parent, it's more important, it's on top. Okay, that's our result now. So we have our ground layer, which is basically half transparent and half glass. That's not what we want, but we do get closer. The next step, and that's the most important one, is we need to make the puddles. We're gonna use a noise texture. Just type in noise texture. Link this with the final output, with the material output. This is what the noise looks like. And what I always do is I make another node, and that's the color ramp. The only purpose of this color ramp is that I can increase the contrast from white to black. So when I bring black down, bring white up, the contrast is going to get stronger, so you're going to see those puddles better. So right now, as you can see, my color ramp is plugged into the material output. I obviously don't want that. Plug in the color ramp into the mix shader factor. And when I now link the mix shader with the material output, I'm gonna start having real puddles already. So now I'm gonna link my color ramp back in because it's easier to work that way, because now I can actually see what is gonna be a puddle and what is not. So I can play with my settings here until I like what I see. So in my noise texture node, there's a few things I like to do. First of all, I increase the scale so the puddles become a little smaller until I found something I like. And I also increase the detail and play with the roughness a little until I like it. And this part is really up to you. Just play with those settings. I explained all of those nodes to you so you kind of have an idea now what they actually do. So just play around with it until you like the result. And remember, right now color ramp is plugged into the material output, but we want the mix shader to actually see what the actual result is. Now you can see when I go through my scene, you can see that it's already reflected. Up here we are in the cycles renderer, so we can really see the real reflections. Okay, one thing about puddles though is, right now the reflective parts and the non-reflective parts, so basically the water of the puddle and the not water of the puddle, there is no real transition. But when you look at references of puddles they become wet, and then there's the actual puddle. So it goes from puddle to being wet to being dry. And this wet part we need to generate now. And we're going to do that with another color ramp node. Right now I have my glass BSDF to my final output so I can see better. With this color ramp node, I plug this into the roughness. Also plug in the noise texture into the factor of the new color ramp. Now again, I'm going to increase the contrast a little until I like my results. Plug the mix shader back into the material output, and here's my result. When you go through my Blender scenes I made, you can see that I use puddles all the time, because again, it gives you free detail. Reflections like that always look great if the scene makes sense. If it's somewhere indoors, don't use it, but if it's outdoors and it's moody anyways, might as well put some puddles on the ground. Just try it and let me know how it goes. My name is Vlog, and see you in the next video. Toodaloo.